and I'll move them over.
Okay.
Let's see. No peak.
So we've got 3.
Marley Melton is a.
Yeah, I'm trying to move
Okay.
both Susan and Marley over.
Okay.
Oops.
Okay, that gets us our quorum, so we can have a meeting. Joelle, you had a list of confirmations. Is there anyone else we're waiting on?
Yeah, give me a second. I'm trying to move Marley Mountain over, allowing me to.
Yeah, I see her now.
Yeah. Yeah, so confirmations, that would be Campbell, Melton, Mayor Peak, and then Tilly and Pentritz.
Okay, all right. So we're in pretty good shape. It's just Jason who is on that list that we don't have yet.
And then Marley, are you able to unmute yourself so you can participate in this meeting? For some reason, I can't move you over to the panelist side. Marley?
Yeah, and
Marley,
same,
yeah.
same with Susan.
But I believe Susan's a panelist. All right. Marley, I'm gonna attempt to promote you again. I did see that you declined my invite to be a
There she
panelist.
is.
Okay, there you go. And then Susan's on.
Great. Let's do a quick sound check with Susan and Marley.
Hi, I'm here. I just can't get the video going for some reason.
Okay. And Marley, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Perfect. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Adam, who is the new representative for MCAR. I don't know, Adam, if you know Mayor Peak or John Tilley or Marley Melton or Susan Giovanni, but they are the other ones who are in attendance right now. Missing are Jason Campbell with City of Seaside City Council, Melody Chrislock, and Mike Rachel, who sits actually on the Carmel Area Wastewater District Board. Kevin Urquhart, who used to be senior fisheries biologist at the district and is a citizen of Carmel. Those are the other folks on the panel who are not attending today. And then, of course, all of us see each other at this point. So with that, I welcome you all. Do we have any members of the public out there? No, we don't. So
That's correct.
we'll have to schedule it the lunch hour more often. Marley, what's up?
It took me 4 tries to log in this morning, and I don't, did the other people who aren't here tell you in advance they're not here, or do you think they're having trouble logging in?
Jason is the only one who confirmed who we don't see here. And I haven't heard from him. Let me just quickly check. He usually,
Right. And I got a text message from one of the panel members.
yeah, I don't see anything from Jason, so he may have just forgotten. And so with that, I guess, Joelle, you want to call us to order with a roll call?
Yes. Panel member Schiavone,
Here,
Panel member Campbell. Absent. Panel member Chrislock. Absent. Panel member Melton.
Present?
Present. Panel member Rachel. Absent. Panel member Urquhart. Absent. Mayor Peak.
Here.
Panel member Penintrus.
Here.
Member Tilly.
Present.
And we have a quorum of the committee.
Excellent. And with that, as I mentioned, there are no members of the public currently in attendance. So there would be
There I
no,
am.
hey, hello. And so we can move on to the action items. The first item is adoption of the minutes from the October 13th meeting and the January 14th, 2022 meeting. Do we have a motion? Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Terrific. I'll call the roll there, Joel.
Yes. Member Schiavone,
Yes.
member Campbell, absent. Member Chrislock, absent. Committee member Melton,
Yes.
committee member Rachel, absent. Committee member Urquhart, absent. Mayor Peak,
Aye.
yes. Committee member Penintrus. And how do you pronounce your
Aye.
name?
Pinterest.
Okay, Pinterest. Okay, good to go. Committee member Tilly.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries.
And Adam, I'm sure you've already gone through this, but you were given your name long before Pinterest became a thing. So I'm sure that people razz you a little bit or have done that, but not quite spelled the same either.
Not quite, but if it weren't for Pinterest, no one would have any idea how to pronounce my name. So I'll
There
take
you
it.
go. There you go. Oh, good. So the next action item, item number 2 on the agenda, is to discuss frequency of our meetings. There was discussion at the February, I think it was February board meeting. I guess I should probably go to the item and get my facts straight here. Let's see. Yeah, it was our board's February meeting. And they were undertaking an effort to kind of streamline some of our other committee processes and frequency of meeting dates, disbanding of one committee, eliminating an inactive committee, and so forth. And the subject area with respect to this panel was, can we move our meetings to 3 times a year? And the board direction was that they were fine with that. However, let's have a discussion with the panel itself. Mr. Tilley spoke at that board meeting, as did Susan. I think you did as well, panel member Schiavone. So, and then there was some back and forth afterwards. Our proposal as the district remains trying to shift to 3 meetings a year of this panel. The panel's mission has not changed. You know, this, surprisingly, this is the 10th year of the panel's existence. It was set up as a kind of a citizens watchdog or oversight panel to ensure that the water supply charge was used primarily for water supply related activities. B, to ensure that administrative overhead didn't creep up and become a big consumer of the water supply charge. I think that limits 15% to overhead. And then C, to, 2 other items. So I guess the third being to annually report non-binding recommendations to the district's board. And then finally, to at some point be involved in the sunsetting of all or a portion of the water supply charge. I think that last one has never failed to be a subject of meeting conversation. So nevertheless, we can talk about it 4 times a year, or we can talk about it 3 times a year. I do support the board's desire to move to just 3 meetings of this panel. You saw in the staff note that it appears that the board has discretion to determine what as needed means. So it's kind of, weird language to say meet quarterly as needed. So we have been attempting to meet quarterly. Some years it actually has turned out to just be 3 times. But the question to put forward to you all is, can we formalize and change the committee charge to reflect just 3 times a year? We've already moved when the annual report is drafted and presented to the board. It's now kind of on a calendar year basis and usually presented to the board at one of its early calendar year meetings. We were thinking that the first meeting should be once we have a draft budget in hand, because then you can see what the water supply projects look like, what the expectations are for receipts. Then in October would be after the fiscal year is closed out and we've got a sense of what actually happened, as well as that would be an opportunity to draft certain recommendations for the annual report. And then January would be to finalize the annual report. And of course, the biggest share of the water supply charge receipts occur in December. So we report back on what's happening there. So that's our recommendation to the panel. But we would like to hear back from you whether that meets your needs or not. And I see, I guess let's start with John Tilley, who has his hand up. Hey, Jason, thanks for joining us. So Joelle, let's note that panelist Campbell joined us.
Yes, I was having a terrible time with the links. They weren't, they were sending me nowhere for some reason.
I think some others had the same issue. So John, you had your hand up?
Well, Dave, the comment about as needed, I don't see that in the language. What it really says is that the committee will meet quarterly, and then it even spells out at each quarterly meeting what's expected from the committee. And I don't see anywhere in the charge of the 152 panel that it's anything other than that, where it's, the as needed phrase is being used. Not to say that I'm against moving to it. I'm just if this is being done because it's of the verbiage around as needed, that doesn't seem to exist in the charge. And if we do go,
it's in the ordinance, John.
If we do go to 3 meetings a year, my main concern is that we're given a sufficient to do the report, like the first draft, the draft of it, maybe 1 month before it's due to the board. So that A, we have time to do any revisions that are necessary as we did in the last go around. And then B, so that we have 11 months to report on, so that it really does reflect a full year of efforts by the committee. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Yeah, Adam.
So I realize I'm the newest member of this panel. I've only had the opportunity to review the recording of the last meeting. And as I recall, that was over an hour long. So I ask, is that about typical of the length of these meetings?
Yeah, it is. I think last time we didn't spend as much time on water gossip as we typically have. We've often used this meeting because, there's 9 people on it who are actively involved in the community. So it's an opportunity to kind of spitball certain water related issues, which again, typically we have done. So that can extend the meeting a little bit. But I think last time too, we were talking about recommendations and so forth. And not every meeting has that much conversation on those topics. So.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. The reason I bring it up, I mean, I'm not a fan of having meetings just for the sake of having a meeting, but it would seem to me that there's quite a bit of substance to cover in these meetings. And I, as a new panelist, I just can't see myself having my first action being, abdicating or relinquishing, my responsibilities here. So that's just my feeling on the subject.
Okay. Any other hands? Yeah, Susan?
Yeah, I'm not attached either way. I mean, I could meet 4 times a year. We've been doing it for many years, but I'm concerned in terms of if it's more efficient to meet 3 times a year. I know there's a lot of preparation that goes into making these meetings happen. I'm not sure what kind of a cost savings that would mean for the district if it did go to 3 meetings and it was an appropriate thing to do. My experience being on this board for the last 5 years, 6 years has been that we tend to have a fairly repetitive meeting, and we get reports and we ask some questions and we tend to go forward on it. I don't see it as controversial as others may, but I do think it's important to meet, and I'm open either way. I could go either way on it, but I would be happy to do 3 meetings a year if that was an appropriate, if the other panel members want to agree to that and the board thinks it's the best thing to do.
Yeah.
I think we've made some changes already in terms of how we report things, and it seems to have tightened it up a bit. And I think John Tilley's suggestion about having a way to review that annual report and everybody put their input into it that they want to have into it is an important thing to do. And so that I think is pretty crucial. I'm not so sure we have to have 4 separate meetings to pull that off. That's a question.
Yeah, and I did see your email asking about costs and efficiency, and I think it's more, it's less the cost savings than it is just, time. And to Adam's point, none of us want to have meetings just for the sake of having meetings, but we've been in a bit of a standoff here for the last couple of years because we, the district, have said there's nothing to talk about. We're spending so much money on water supply that we're not even ready to talk about sunsetting the water supply charge. We'll talk more about projects and expenditures in a minute. I really, at this point, I don't have a problem keeping it at 4. And if we schedule a 4th one and decide not to have it, or there's not enough to do, we can live with that. I think the other actions that our board took, and Jason will come back to you, I see your hands up in a second, moving our water demand committee and our water supply committee to every other month. There was clearly some staff time savings in that move. And, I think those kind of things are helpful. But for us as this group, I'm not seeing a whole lot of savings by going from 4 to 3. So.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm open either way. So
Okay.
that's where I am.
Jason?
Thank you. I think I'd be more fluent at these Zoom meetings, but I guess it hasn't taken. But we discussed this, I don't know how many years ago. We thought about reducing the number of meetings, and back then I argued for leaving it at 4, with the understanding that sometimes, even though we had 4, the goal was 4, we would only have 3 in a year for whatever reason, because it became difficult to schedule. So I'm still comfortable with shooting for 4. And if for some reason, like you said, Dave, if there's just not enough information, or we can't get a quorum together or whatever, and that 4th meeting doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I might as well strive for 4, and understanding that sometimes it will be 3 for whatever reason.
Okay, and one of John's earlier points via email was, with the Taxpayer Association's lawsuit ongoing, that there may be something to report at some point, that keeping the frequency up might be sensible at this point. And I can't dispute that one. I just I'm the one who came in here advocating fewer meetings, but I've already acquiesced, so I think we could live with 4. Marley, you have a comment? Oh, you're still on mute. There you go.
Yes, I agree with John Tilley that it would be nice to have the extra month at least to review the report, so everyone can offer input. And as far as 3 or 4, I'm happy with either decision. I do feel that if there's something that we as members could do, it seems like we're mostly a sounding board, and we receive the reports, and I don't feel like I'm contributing a lot. So I hope that the board will ask us to do something if they need us to do anything. That's
Yeah,
it.
and you raise a great point, Marley, and that's where I guess on more than one occasion I've said that the work of this committee or this panel is somewhat limited, because I think we've gotten pretty effective at making sure we're not spending the money on things other than water supply, nor are we jamming a lot of it into administrative overhead. So we're doing the two fiscal things that this watchdog was supposed to watch over. And then the rest is, a significant difference of opinion over whether or not the water supply charge should continue or should be sunset, could or should be used for Measure J costs, election costs, those kinds of things. And that's where I think we've kind of reached a standoff, because our board has heard from this panel, and the panel has changed a little bit over time. We don't have the benefit of Paul Bruno's consistent voice, right? But he was always banging the drum on a couple of issues, and I'll continue to say that we're not ready to wean ourselves of the water supply charge. We need that cash. We're spending money. We're still, and Suresh will get into this, but we're doing Pure Water Monterey expansion. We're finishing off a deep injection well. We've got some aquifer storage and recovery expenditures coming. There is an expectation that the lights at the end of the tunnel in terms of large capital expenditures, but not quite yet. So I think where I'm seeing we're at is we'll keep it at 4. I think we may bring forward a set of revisions to the committee charge so that the 4 meetings line up better with the annual report, for example, the month that we have been referring that to the board and so forth, but no other substantive changes. And I appreciate your input on that. Any other comments or questions on this topic?
Yes, will the board be okay with that, with this?
Yeah, their direction was to discuss it with the panel and see which direction the panel wanted to go. And so the board will accept that we keep it at 4, but I do think we need to clean it up and have the committee charge reflect the practice, at least in terms of when the report goes in and so forth.
Okay.
So thank you all on that. I see we have one attendee now, Tim. I'm betting it's Tim O'Halloran. But is there any public comment on this topic?
And Dave, I see no raised hands.
Good, okay. So we can move on to the next item, which is, now we're into discussion. And Suresh, do you want to walk us through the 3 exhibits and some of the expectations related to the budget for the coming year?
Yes, absolutely. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we could hear you.
Perfect. So yeah, this is the review of revenue and expenses for the water supply charge, and I have 3 exhibits attached in here. One of them is the exhibit 3A, which is the supply charge receipt. 3B, which is the water supply charge analysis, but in a detailed form. And then the 3C is basically the summarized form which the panel had requested before. So 3A, exhibit 3A, if we go to page, I don't have the page numbers here, but So water supply charge receipt, it says for 21-22 through March 31st, 2022, we have received about 59.7% of the water supply charge. That was the first revenue received in December of 2021. So that's about fairly the normal range of first payment received, about 60% of the total charge. The next payment was received in April, which the committee will see the next report that we provide, the next quarterly report, because we have not closed April as the books for the district. Exhibit 3B, which is the detailed analysis. Again, this is all the expenses and revenues collected through March 31st, 2022. As you can see, the water supply charge being the first line, and then the capacity fee. We also are showing the PWM water sales, which happens every month, the project reimbursements, property tax, and then some small revenues there. So total revenues through the 9 months was $12.2 million. And through the first 12 months, the expenses all lined up to about $11.6 million. So we had a little surplus through the first 9 months, $540,000, $550,000. But there are still some expenses slated to happen in the last quarter of the fiscal year. So that's where we stand on Exhibit 3B. And then if you look at Exhibit 3C.
Before we move on to Exhibit 3C, there's something I wanted to say on 3A. You know, last year we budgeted at 3.3 million with the expectation that the assessor's office or the tax collector's office would have some delinquencies due to COVID. And there was no evidence of those delinquencies, which is why we moved back to a 3.4 million budget in the current fiscal year. And it was just very interesting that we've been relatively unaffected. And that's because the collection vehicle here it's a fee, but it's collected with the tax bill. Monterey One Water, as an example, and other direct billing utilities did see a downslide due to COVID with increased delinquencies, which is why you saw a lot of both state and federal legislation offering monies to affected utilities that were having collection problems. But we did not experience any of that in either our user fee or our water supply charge. And go ahead, Suresh.
Yeah, so turning focus to Exhibit 3C, we are reporting the numbers from 2013 all the way to 2022 for the first 9 months. And again, this is 2013 when the water supply charge was first enacted. As you can see, pretty much every year, if we just use the water supply charge revenue and then all of the expenses related to that fund, and then we put back in the other revenue sources like right now, the PWM water sales, or if there was a project reimbursements or grants, we do bring that back into it. So if you see the bottom line, the difference surplus deficit, pretty much every year, there is a deficit from the water supply charge itself. And so cumulatively, for the last 10 years, you'll see that the water supply charge fund is actually in the hole about $11.2 million. So that's going back to Dave's point before, is that the water supply charge, even though if all the projects go away, we still have not been made whole from the water supply charge. So it'll take maybe 2 or 3 cycles after all the projects are said and done to actually bring that $11 million deficit back down to zero.
Yeah, and one of the things you'll notice in this one too is in the expenditures side, the biggest expenditure is water purchases, but the other revenue sources down at the bottom, you see water sales. So for the past 2 years, they're roughly equivalent. They're a net push. We buy the water from Monterey One Water, and then we sell it with, buy it with our left hand, sell it with our right hand, and it's pretty much a push. So it's what's happening with all the other items that drives the surplus or deficit. And what's really happening here is our project expenditures are exceeding our intake when you load it with the people working on the projects and doing the water quality monitoring and, you know, all that kind of the salary and benefits related to the people. But you can see in 2022, our expenditures were lower. It's not a full year, but in 21 and 20, you know, basically we spent, you know, almost $12 million on expenditures, bringing in only 7 million from the water supply charge. So that's what's driving our accumulated deficit. Last year, we did pay $500,000 down as a prepayment on the Mechanics Bank loan. Yep, thanks, John. We expect to do that again this year, but that's still going to leave us about a $2.2 million balloon payment that we'll either have to refinance or pay down, depending on what our financial situation is at the end of 2023. So that's coming around the corner as well. John, you got your hand up.
Now, whereas a couple of years ago, I said the user fee should not be included in this kind of a chart, but nonetheless, is the user fee also feeding into some of these expenses where the water supply charge is not covering them?
Yeah, and in fact, on the previous chart, the user fee is in there. And so our user fee in total is over 4 million, but we only allocated, for example, so far in the current year, 764,000 of the user fee to help balance the water supply portion of our budget, which means the remainder of the user fee is going to environmental mitigation on the river, you know, the fish, vegetation, that kind of stuff, and then our conservation and permitting functions. But yeah, there is a little bit of user fee coming over. And then we also get these, you know, project reimbursements. Those are where more often than not, it's CalAm money, but occasionally it's been grant money for certain projects.
And just to add a little clarification to that, Dave, the board adopted the 8.325% user fee, and so at that point they segregated 1.2% to go toward water supply charge fund. So that's where the 1.2% is coming from. That's that 700,000.
Right, right. That's correct. So what Suresh is referring to is back in, boy, I can't put my finger on it. It's like 2010 or 2009. We actually did a Proposition 218 approval of 1.2% of the user fee, and its total is 8.325%. But that 1.2% was designed to help pay off the aquifer storage and recovery project, because we used a bunch of funds, you know, basically internal borrowing to pay for the ASR, the first portion of the ASR, and then approved that one little piece of the user fee to pay it back. So yeah, we always move that over to the water supply fund area. Yeah, Susan.
Yeah, I just was wondering, in terms of expenditures, are you seeing an increase in this now due to a lot of the issues around the pandemic and the economy and inflation and all of the things that are happening? How do you see that coming down in this future year here?
Yeah, so there's two real big impacts that we've seen. The first is just the time delays. So we've seen a lot of, well, I guess it's really three impacts. We are seeing construction costs going up. So projects that we bid have come in higher, and so it's a lot of materials and sourcing. But the supply chain issue has just added a lot of time to these things. But then over in like Pure Water Monterey, there's a lot of chemical costs, and we're seeing significant inflation in the chemical costs. So the price of water for that project jumped for next year. Suresh, what was about 22% or 21%?
It's 24%.
Yeah, 24%. And almost all of that increase is due to chemical costs. There's a little bit of adding in some set aside for renewal and replacement, or depreciation charge, if you will, so that, you know, build up a replacement fund. But yeah, almost all of it was due to chemicals. So yeah, significant. Anybody else?
Dave, Mayor Peak.
Yes. Hi, Mayor.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the report, Suresh. Couple of simple questions. I see in the budget, there's listed 3 operating funds. Is there a water supply fund?
The water
Well,
supply
I see,
fund
I'm
is in
sorry,
the budget.
water supply. Let me rephrase my question. Is the water supply fund the water supply charge?
Correct.
Okay.
Well,
And-
it's
And
the fund
and so-
receives all the water supply charge in it, but as John Tilley pointed out, we also moved some user fee into it, some permit fees and so forth. But yeah, the funds are more based on function. So we've got the 3 funds, one to develop water supply and do our regulatory compliance, one for environmental stewardship, and then one for conservation and permitting.
So this deficit, 11.25 million, is that money that has to be repaid?
That is board policy. They have addressed the issue of sunset on the water supply charge a number of times, and they prioritized 3 things. One is to repay the internal borrowing. One is to pay off the Mechanics Bank loan. Suresh, bail me out. I can't remember what the 3rd priority is. I think it was establish a fund to begin to sunset the charge itself, but not until the first 2 are done. And as I mentioned, we're about 2.2 million away at the end of next year on paying off the loan. And then some or a portion of this 11 million of interfund borrowing would get repaid. So that would be, 3 years worth of water supply charge with no other activity other than repaying ourselves. And then
Thank you.
we would likely have a surplus.
Yeah.
Sunset.
Yeah, at some point, it seems like the district is built up to do these projects and the size, and we all know the size of the district's revenue is commensurate to the projects. And when the projects are all finished, then it's time to shrink the district, not replenish it, but shrink it.
Yeah, I'll accept that editorial. Yeah. There is something we said, and as you look at this chart, this Exhibit 3C, what stands out is in the deficit, quote unquote, really started happening in 2014, and this was the beginning of 2 things. One was all the pre-construction expenses for Pure Water Monterey began really in that time period. And we, the district, ended up spending about 12 million on Pure Water Monterey before the state revolving fund loan came in. And so once the loan and grants started coming in, then the district's commitment went away. Then we began spending on deep injection well number 4 2 years ago. And most recently, we authorized about 1.2 million on Pure Water Monterey expansion costs. And then layered in there at the same time, we did a treatment building at ASR, expanded the backflush pit and so forth. So most of that kind of stuff is over. And we don't have a whole lot of designs. We do have a well project that my Water Resources Division is bringing in at about 4 million as a request in the current budget cycle. So there are some spot projects, but even, for example, Pure Water Monterey expansion, we just got a term sheet from the EPA over their, what's called WIFIA, which is Water Infrastructure Financing Innovation Act, something like that. And it looks like we'll be able to do that loan program for most of the expenditures. So the bid documents will reach completion probably in July or August. And we'll go out to bid, and we won't award until we're sure that we've got the financing secured, which means the district's out of pocket will go way down because we'll be using the WIFIA proceeds. And then the repayment of that will be in the price of the water. So, you know, there won't be a whole lot more even on pure water expansion. There will be some expenditures. We have to do another allocation program. So, you know, Pacific Grove wants a commitment of water from whatever new water projects get built. Monterey wants a commitment of water. You know, we want to get the jurisdictions back on the track where they're not constrained by how much water they have to work with. So we need to allocate that water. We've got the Department of Defense who would like an allocation and so forth. So there's CEQA work and some other work that'll be involved, and that'll be probably a few $100,000 expenditure. But yeah, the major projects will start fading. And so to, you know, John Tilley's editorial point, yeah, we should be able to shrink a little, at least the expenditures in this water supply fund side.
Dave, could you send us a list of the where the debt is owed and to who? Do you have that available?
Yeah. I mean, as I said, most of it's internal borrowing. And so we have I forget the term, it's a general reserve. And then the Mechanic Bank loan is a specific reserve. We did some lending, internal lending to one of our enterprise funds. Some of you may not know, but the district owns the water in the Pebble Beach Reclamation Project. So there's 4 partners, and Carmel Area Wastewater District treats water up to a tertiary level, a Title 22 standard that can then be used for irrigation. We own that water from the plant inside the Pebble Beach Community Service District's pipes and tank. And then the Pebble Beach company secured a guarantee with a bank letter of credit and some other things. So those 4 entities partner on that reclamation project. And so we, the district, have the enterprise fund for the sale of that water, and we sell that water. And we did a $1 million lending to a tank rehabilitation that has subsequently been repaid. But we can cobble all that together and send you off something, Mayor. But again, most of all of this is internal borrowing, except for the Mechanics Bank loan at this point.
I'd certainly appreciate getting that report.
Yep. Anybody else? All right, Suresh, do you have anything else for us?
No, that's it.
Okay. In addition to what the mayor requested, I think we will be finalizing our draft budget by tomorrow morning. Is that where we're at now with at the staff level? And then we have a budget workshop May 26th. And then we'll have our project list ready to go. I might as well just send that out to all of the members of this panel as well, just so you can see what projects are getting approved within the next year's budget for water supply, since it's just not ready yet. And with that, open for water gossip.
Yeah, Dave, you passed over on item 4, which is an update on MPTA. Did you want to?
Right. Yeah.
Hit on that? I can do that quickly if you'd like.
Yeah, I was going to say we'll let you do that since there hasn't been a whole lot of progress, but there is.
Just recapping the bidding here. In September of last year, the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association filed a challenge to the district's water supply charge and claimed that that violated Prop 218. The district demurred to that petition. The demur was heard in early February. The district demur was based upon our perspective that the district did not extend, impose, or increase the water supply charge, which would be the basis for a Prop 218 challenge. And as such, that there was nothing to be complained about in the petition. The Judge Panetta did hear that and overruled the district's demur in mid-February. The district board considered that if the ordinary course of the challenge would have been then to brief the matter and have the administrative record before the judge for a decision on the complaint and petition. But the district board directed that Judge Panetta's ruling on the demur should be challenged. So an appellate writ was filed. The appellate writ was filed on March 18th of this year. And the record of the court on the demur has been lodged with the appellate court. And that's where the matter lies at the moment. The appellate court needs to determine if it will accept the appellate writ. This is a matter of discretion, not a matter of right by the district. And therefore, the appellate court could decide that it's not going to rule on this at this time and refer the matter back to the trial court for the remainder of the trial court proceedings. The district's petition for an appellate writ does suggest that this matter can be fully resolved and clarified by the appellate court at this time. So that the next step will be hearing from the appellate court as to whether it has accepted the appeal. And if so, then it will issue a briefing schedule. And in the other universe, the appellate court could say that this matter is not ripe for review at this time and could dismiss that. So that's completes my status report as to where we are with the MPTA case.
Great,
Happy to
thank
answer
you.
any questions.
Yeah, Jason.
Two questions. So what's the expected timing on the decision of the appellate court on whether they're going to hear it or not? And if it is sent back to the trial court, would it likely be heard by the same Judge Panetta?
Oh, yes. Judge Panetta is the assigned judge, and she will be the judge if and when for all proceedings at the trial court level. The appellate court works in slow and wondrous, slow. I said that twice ways. So I would anticipate that we will be getting a determination from the appellate court in the next 30 to 60 days as to whether or not they will entertain the appeal. So if they do not, then it'll be shipped back to the trial court, and then the trial court will set a briefing schedule on the case. So we will know by the end of summer what path we're following. If this is before the appellate court, then I would anticipate that that'll be another 12 to 18 months for both the briefing and then the court's internal processes before we would actually have a hearing.
Okay, yeah, thank you. The wheels of justice, boy, do
they grind exceedingly fine, but exceedingly slow.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I like the use of the word wondrous.
Yeah.
In describing the legal process. So then moving to an update on water supply projects.
The gossip portion, is that it?
Yeah, as we water gossip. Just an update on, we'll go through Pure Water Monterey expansion, desalination, Pure Water Monterey base project, and then anything else you guys have an interest in. So we are in front of the Public Utilities Commission right now on a two-phase application. The first phase is to consider approval of an amendment to the water purchase agreement, which would include an expansion of the project, approximately 2,250 acre feet of additional supply. That particular phase, or phase one, is due for a decision roughly this coming September. And so if there is a proposed decision that includes approval of the amended and restated water purchase agreement, that's when bid documents will be put out to the street, or actually bid documents may actually go to the street before that, but there would be no award until we've got a decision that's approving the water purchase agreement. So we're still kind of stuck in that, best case September of this calendar year timeframe. The second phase of that application is to relook at long-term supply and demand. All the way back in 2018, when the desalination plant was approved, there was a projected future demand of about 14,000 acre feet per year. And what we've seen is that we've kind of hit a steady asymptote, if you will, of current demand at about 9,400 to 9,700 acre feet per year, which is significantly below what the perception was 4 or 5 years ago. So the Utilities Commission will be looking at the long-term supply and demand numbers and try to make a determination on whether the desal plant should be resized, move forward in its current state, put on hold, if you will. I can tell you that there's been no real progress with respect to meeting the final needs of the Coastal Commission to reapply. There was some direction provided by the Coastal Commission that there's been very little activity on. And there's a scenario being developed for groundwater modeling that shows the desal plant coming online in 2030. That's some Seaside Water Master modeling. So the concept of a desalination plant is still out there. Its movement is on a different track. And I can't say right now what the ultimate outcome would be. But the phase 2 schedule, the supply and demand schedule in front of the PUC has basically a proposed decision within 90 days of reply briefs, and reply briefs wouldn't happen really until later this calendar year. So I think what you're looking at is probably early 2023 before that second phase of the PUC process will receive a proposed decision. On the base project, there's a little bit of controversy going around, and I can't tell you who and who has not received letters, but there's a pretty massive battle of rhetoric currently underway about the base project. And to kind of encapsulate it briefly, one of the relatively important production wells for getting water out of the ground in the northern part of the Calamine Service Territory has been the Aquifer Storage and Recovery, or ASR, well number 1. As we built out the Pure Water Monterey base project, which, by the way, we're now into, in September, we'll be entering the 3rd year of production. So, we've had 2 really good years. And we recently developed 2 new deep injection wells. So the injection capacity is pretty significant at this point. We actually now have more capacity than we have a permit for. But by example, last month in April, 368 acre feet were injected, which, if you extrapolate that out, is about 4,300 acre feet per year. And the contract with Cal-Am is only 3,500 acre-feet. So we can outperform the contract objectives. But we also need to modify the permits and so forth. So the project is working really well. The one unfortunate thing that's happened is the travel time for the injected water is faster than the models predicted. And that's, I've learned one thing. It's hard to understand geology because it's under the ground. And it's not until you do something that you learn, that maybe your models weren't as good as you thought. And so it's been moving underground a little bit faster than expected. And so the use of aquifer storage and recovery well number 1 as a production well would imperil the potential water quality. The whole idea of these recycled water programs is that there's an environmental buffer and the water sits in the ground a minimum of 2 months before it comes out of the ground. And that ASR well number 1 is kind of right on that 2-month contour. So the proposal in front of the Division of Drinking Water is to not use ASR well number 1 as a production well. And the point of compliance is actually a well called the Peralta well, which has an over 4-month travel time, which is a big buffer, very conservative. But it means that the production capacity is limited. But the letter writing campaign is conflating water supply with water production capacity. So in other words, the water is there. The plant is working perfectly. As I said, it can actually produce more water than there's a contract for. But getting the water out of the ground and actually delivering it to where it's needed are 2 plumbing challenges that have not been mastered. And the districts posed a couple alternatives, like qualifying ASR well number 4 as a production well, connecting the Peralta well to the Monterey pipeline so it can capture and extract pure water Monterey water and deliver it elsewhere, like to Pacific Grove and Carmel and the Carmel Valley. And these things are being looked at. But I think that the specter of losing ASR well number 1 as a production well has gotten California American Water very concerned about its production capacity. And so there's been a little letter writing campaign, and it's taken on a life of its own. Supervisor Phillips has taken the most recent letter and somehow tied it to the RENA housing numbers and had it distributed by AMBAG to its distribution list. And there's not a thing in the letter about housing starts, or water for housing. It was sent by the company to Senator Laird. And I frankly took the phone call and said, I have no idea why this would be elevated to a senator's level, but it was nevertheless. And so you will probably see 1 or 2 or 3 of the various letters. There's a lot of finger pointing. There's use of words like breach. We don't believe there's any breach whatsoever. But it's, as I said, it's a concern to the company that they're not going to be able to get all their water out of the ground and delivered to customers. Should that translate to a rationing or a shortage of any kind? No, it shouldn't. And are there solutions? Yes, there are solutions. And my belief is that this will blow over. I've tried to characterize it as, what happens if a truck had rolled over the headworks of that well and it was a mechanical failure? What was the company's contingency plan? This is a 1 well problem, and its whole public discussion right now is really overblown. relative to what the problem is. And frankly, there should have been a contingency plan. This is a problem of perhaps the company's own making, because they've known about the constraints over extraction capacity for many years. So anyway, I just want to leave that out there. That's going on right now. I see that Melody has joined us and that Susan has her hand up. So we'll go Susan first and then Melody.
I just want to see, are there engineering solutions that could possibly slow the water down that might be doable?
Yeah, so the easiest solution would be to inject less water or move further away. You know, there's 4 injection wells, deep injection wells. So you would, reduce injection at the closest ones. One of the fundamental problems with that is we might not then meet the performance guarantees. And one of the ironic things in all of this is the company hasn't come to us and said, we will release you from your performance guarantees under your contract. They've said, oh, it's your obligation to pump less or inject less water, but doing so would produce less water. And we have a supply issue here. And this is the largest single supply in the CalAm portfolio at this moment. 3,500 acre feet is a couple hundred acre feet bigger than their Carmel River water right. And it's approximately twice their Seaside groundwater basin water right. And so it is the largest supply source. And so it's paradoxical to say, deliver us less water, and that's going to help solve the water supply problem. So that would be the engineering solution, but it's not a very good one. So the better way to engineer it would be to drill a new well, connect an existing well to the bigger transmission and distribution system, qualify an already existing well as a production well. Those are the kinds of things that that can also be done. I mean, to be honest with you, if they spent as much time on the engineering as they have on the letter writing, we probably have already solved the problem. Let's go to Melody and then Marley.
Yeah, so Dave, it seems like it might be time for you to write an editorial to explain this. And I think one thing that's confusing is when you keep using the word production well, it probably would be better and clearer if people understood that it's it's an extraction well that CalAm is missing. They can't pull the water out of the ground, it's there. And that puts the blame squarely where it belongs, on CalAm for not thinking ahead. So, I mean, I think you should get out in front of this, honestly. It's just one of those things that can start to spiral into somehow this project isn't working, which is just a big lie. I'm sorry, guys, I got to get back to the Coastal Commission here. I was just back.
Yeah, that's right. Huntington Beach is today, huh?
It is today. And boy, yeah. They have all morning. All the public agencies have been promoting the Poseidon desal. So now this afternoon is all the environmental groups. So I want to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, go for it.
We'll report back.
Yeah, and so, we're unsure where Evan Jacobs has sent all of his material to. We've gotten some inquiries by some of the press, not all of the press. And so, you'll see what comes out in the Pine Cone tomorrow, whether it gets the story right or wrong. And the Herald is reviewing, there's like 3 or 4 letters back and forth that they're looking at. And so I'm not sure an editorial is going to clarify anything, but it is in the hands of the press, not all by our doing, but we have been responsive.
I think an editorial would clarify a lot. What you just explained is very clear.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Let's see, Marley, we've got your hand up, and then Jason, I think. Yeah.
I just wanted to say it's interesting, the 2-month requirement is actually purely political. It is not supported by science. It's just because people say they don't want to drink sewer water. But the water that you're injecting has been treated to better than drinking water standards. And the whole 2-month requirement is without basis. However, it would probably be easier to spend another $1 million drilling another well than it would be to change this ruling.
Yeah, you definitely know what you're talking about, Marley, because that's 100% true. And when we started, the regulators were contemplating a 6-month minimum travel time. And here we are today, and it is a 2-month. And the difference between less than 2 months makes it direct potable reuse, and greater than 2 months makes it indirect potable reuse. And there's a third form, which is augmenting, so putting recycled water into like a big reservoir, the lake behind a dam has its own set of regulations. And so you're 100% correct that it's interesting that we have a permit from the regional board, and the regional board governs the discharge of waste. And so we have a waste discharge requirement that is dealing with water that's better than what comes out of the Carmel River in terms of quality. And yeah, that's just, you're right. But they had to draw a line somewhere to do exactly what you say, and it's not just, if something went wrong at the plant and there was a pathogen that swept through, the whole idea is you can identify it, it hasn't hit your drinking water supply yet, and then you can remediate. You can suck the water back out of the ground, treat it, remove the pathogens, ensure that the plant is now working correctly, and then go back to normal. So they wanted some buffer so that you actually could intervene if there was a mistake. But to your point, when you don't make any mistakes, it's better quality water going into the ground than probably it is when it comes out, because now it's sat in the ground for a while, right? So, yeah.
But it is treated again. So once again, if the pathogen had been in the Carmel River water, your treating standards are enough to remove it. And the same, I believe, would be true of the water that's goes through that you would be pulling out, even if there was a slip up. But it seems to me if there was something big enough to make it not drinkable, not treatable, that would have, something that large would definitely have been discovered immediately.
Yep, you are correct. Adam, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Dave. And forgive me, as the newest panel member, I just want to make sure that I have an accurate understanding. So I'd like to take us back to something I think you mentioned a little while ago. I think you said that the demand in the last 2 or 3 years came in lower than expected. Am I understanding or characterizing that accurately?
Yeah, or lower than the basis for the demand projections in the original desalination application. And part of the reason is, of course, that the application was submitted to the Public Utilities Commission in April of 2012. And it wasn't decided upon until September of 2018. So 6 years had passed. And you can see a trend in the data going downward. And so long-term water supply planning, kind of ignoring peak day or peak hour, because you also have to plan to have excess capacity for, car week or things like that. Ignoring that, water supply planning is basically how much do we use today, how much do we need in the future, and how fast are we going to get there? And that's kind of the slope of what you're planning for. And so the desalination application, I think as we look at it today, started with the wrong assumption of how much do we use today, and may have gone with the wrong assumption of how fast will we get there. I don't think we have complete disagreement on how much we're going to need in the future. There are minor disagreements over economic bounce back or room occupancy rates, things like that. But generally speaking, legal lots of record are a known quantity, housing starts are a known quantity, population growth is a known quantity. So if your three things are how much do we use, how much do we need, and how fast are we going to get there, and you get two of those wrong, that's kind of where the learnings we have today, that's where there's a big disagreement, I guess. We think that
Yeah.
two of those three were wrong. And so that'll be subject to the phase 2 discussion I mentioned earlier.
Thank you. And if I may, just because you mentioned both in the last meeting and in this meeting, the RENA numbers, and we're seeing besides the RENA numbers, various legislation and mandates from the state to build more housing, which is urgently needed, both market rate and affordable, is desperately needed. And so, would it be prudent to estimate that despite the fact that demand may have been lower than expected recently, that may trend upwards? Would that be prudent?
And it's a really good point, because the 6th cycle RENA, the one that just got released in draft form that looks like it will be approved, is in some cases 5 times greater than the same numbers from the 5th cycle.
Right.
And so just last month, we did look at that, how much water would be needed for the 6 cities on the Monterey Peninsula based on their 4 categories of RENA numbers. We've been a little gentle with it because no one believes that all that housing can or will be built, but some of it will. And we actually now have, a couple motivated city councils that are looking to try to make an impact on it. And so when you add up all 6 of the cities with their market rate, moderate, low, and very low income categories, it's about 750 acre feet. And that's assigning some of it to single bedroom, single bath, double bedroom, double bath, multifamily, single family home. So market rate, we're treating as kind of a mixture of single family homes and higher end condos and so forth. So we did, we kind of broke it all out and then assigned fixture unit counts to it. And yeah, it came out to about 750. Do we believe that'll get built in 8 years? No, but at least we have a number on it now at this point.
Thank you.
Jason?
I'm going to bow out because I'm supposed to speak at the Coastal Commission, so I'm going to take off. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
You tell them, Susan.
I'll give it a try.
Great.
Jason, did you have anything left, or is your hand just up?
No, I do. I was just gonna, a couple of questions, sorry. The ASR well, we referred to it, I think it's ASR 1 that they're extracting from. With that label ASR, I just kind of assumed it was for ASR water, not for other waters.
Yeah.
Kind of a gray zone, or?
No, it's.
And who owns it?
I want to be delicate about this because it was built and intended to be a seasonally used well for storage and recovery. But it's a really darn good well. It's very productive. And we share the operations. We're the certified permittee for injection, and Cal-Am is the certified permittee for extraction. Drinking water certification is very important, and they are certified to produce drinking water. But it's a really good well, and they've gotten accustomed to using it for, if you look at even the company's own description, for recovery of ASR water, pure water Monterey water, and native groundwater. So it's become a go-to well for all 3 of those. But no, that was not what it was intended for. And you are correct. Its nomenclature seems to imply seasonality. And that's really one of our beefs about it. The company knew it had an extraction capacity problem, way back in some technical memos 4 years ago. So.
Okay, and then, thank you. And my other question is regarding letters that are going around. And by any chance is this a letter? I'm sorry, you have to humor me here. It's the first paragraph is, I have a hard time reading it. It says California American Water's current inability to use ASR1 to extract water from the Seaside groundwater basin caused by the Pure Water Monterey project's lack of compliance with regulatory underground retention times at that location is a critical issue impacting available water supply for the Monterey Peninsula, both this year and beyond. I read that.
Yeah, that's the one you got on Wednesday night, right? Or
yeah, and
yeah.
that first paragraph, it would just seem so, I don't know, convoluted, like twists itself in circles to reverse kind of who's being passive and who's being active there, because Monterey One Water puts the water in the ground.
And it's not out of compliance with any regulation whatsoever.
Right, and if there's a timing issue, it's when it's extracted, which is not what Monterey One Water does. It's the extraction is the result of Cal-Am. It's not. I mean, they're more in control of the timing than anyone else. I just want to point that out, that it seems convoluted as to who's being the active party as far as shortening the time. But anyway.
Yep. John.
I think really just looking to blame Cal-Am or looking for who to blame is never really a good way to conduct ourselves, because this really is a joint effort. I see these letters going in. It's like there's one by Kathy Biala talking about how 3 public agencies came together for Pure Water Monterey. They just leave Cal-Am out of it, like they're only there to be whipped on when something goes wrong. Because really, Jason, it's not like that. It's travel time, so it's very relevant about when the water goes in and when it comes out. You can't just it's not fair to say that it's not Pure Water Monterey's problem because they're putting the water in and therefore they're absolved of it. It's a continuum of agencies and Cal-Am that has to be considered here, versus just kind of ostracizing one of the really relevant partners in all of this. Not supporting Cal-Am, not deriding Cal-Am or anybody, but really saying that all of the entities involved have to work together if there's going to be
Cal-Am, I'm sorry, does not have a huge credibility here, and when they when they're intentionally striving to make Monterey One Water default on the injection, I mean that's how it reads, is they are intentionally drawing the water out, relying on a well they clearly shouldn't be relying on, and saying that the solution is for Monterey One Water to default.
I hear that. I hear that.
That's.
But when you get a lot of dysfunctionality going on, it's kind of hard to sort through it sometimes. Dave, I'm curious. With the letters that are signed by you and Paul that we're seeing in this communications, how is this information being communicated to the board, the Water District Board, so that the approval is in place for these kind of communications to go on? Because as you know, I watch a lot of the stuff that happens, and I don't see this conversation really happen in the public domain.
Yeah, well, I think take for example the response to the accusations of breach. So there was a letter received by an outside law firm for Cal-Am citing 2 agreements that they say we are in breach of, and asking for dispute resolution. The district's response letter was crafted by district counsel, Mr. Laredo, approved by the chair and vice chair, and then will be reported back to the board in closed session. And discussion was had whether the full board needed to see it before it was mailed or needed to see it after it was mailed, and the decision was made that they could be apprised after it was mailed.
Okay,
a joint letter by Paul Sciutto and myself, that was a compliance discussion for the state water board, and the way it works, there's kind of a cause and effect. you need the Division of Drinking Water to approve your Title 22 engineers report. And then the regional board can rely on that DDW approved report as it's crafting the permit for the waste discharge. And so to move the approval of the report forward, we had to make a decision on, is ASR 1 going to be used and a point of compliance, or is it going to be turned off and not a point of compliance? That's an administrative function. That's a regulatory action. So Paul and I have the discretion to go do that. So, you know, our letter that gave an unpleasing outcome was at our level, the GM level. Then the legal stuff starts happening, and then it goes to the board. And sometimes, again, it's just chair, vice chair. Sometimes it's full board. There are things, you know, the one safe harbor we all know about is pending and threatened litigation. And so a lot of this goes on in closed session. And public agencies are different. You know, there's, I think Marina Coast Water District, every agenda has all 7 lawsuits that they're involved in, whether they're talking about them or not. We take a different tack. We tend to only identify the lawsuits that we intend to talk about at closed session. So you can kind of get a little glimpse of what's going on at our district by, you know, reading the closed session captions. But yeah, you'll never hear a lot of the discussion.
Thank you, Dave. Chair, Vice Chair. Thank you very much.
Mayor, see your hand up.
Oh, hi. Can you help me out? I'm lost. Where are we in the agenda?
We are on item 6 and willing to wrap it up when all the hands stay down. Which I guess was a great suggestion because the hands are all down. Which would bring us to any suggested items for the next meeting. I know we've agreed on a couple of follow-up items to get mailed out to the group. Mayor, your hand is up again. You have a comment?
Yes, on number 7, I'm interested. I think you have the accounting data in your report. So my request is more of a visual or a rearrangement. I'd like to see some charts on expenses and revenue for projects, water supply projects, Pure Water Monterey, purchases and sales, and what is called reimbursement projects or projects reimbursement. I don't know if they're the same thing. If you can provide some charts, we'd love to see the last 2 years actuals and projected for, or just the last 3 years, or the last 2 years plus the projected year, revenue versus expenses by project, and to help understand what's the financial trajectory of these pieces. Thank you.
Yeah. Suresh, you think we can come up with something on that?
Yeah, I don't know how we can to show on the revenue side, but on the expenses side, sure. I mean, we do have some details on Exhibit 3B for the project expenses.
Yeah, without the revenue side, the charts would not. If there's no revenue, well, that's real easy. It's 0. If it's not possible to do revenue by project, then that's good information as well.
Yeah, we'll dig into it, but I get where you're coming from. We'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
Yeah, and actually that last Exhibit 3C, that was also a result of, I think, yours and John Tilley's request to kind of just look at water supply without all the other revenue sources. And I think it is a pretty clear chart. So yeah, let's kind of move in this direction that you're talking about and see if we can
Thank you.
make it meaningful. Jason.
Thank you. Yeah, this is just only if there's time and interest. I remember way back when I joined this commission, Dave, you did a really nice little history lesson for the board of kind of how we got where we're at, and you know, a little bit of history for the water system, which I found very interesting and enlightening. And I just thought, and we've had so much turnover on this board since then, if there was interest for you to give us that history again, I would love to hear it again. But I know it's a matter of time and agendizing and all that, but it was you did a great job. I still remember the presentation.
Well, we have that 4th meeting a year that we need to fill, so.
Perfect.
Okay, anybody else with any thoughts on future agendas? I think we're in good shape to wrap this up then. All right, any public comment from our one public attendee? If so, feel free to raise your hand.
I see no raised hands.
Okay, then we will adjourn until next time. Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Be well.
Bye.